The one where Ross and Rachel take a break is such an important episode of Friends because it shapes so much of the narrative going forward, at least the narrative revolving around Ross and Rachel. This is the 15th episode of the third season of Friends and it's directed by the wonderful James Burrows. And there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode, mostly chronologically, and share some thoughts on this. I will get in with the main narrative in a moment, but the opening scene really helps to shape the whole episode because the opening scene, it's really strong. It starts off with Phoebe needing an atlas because she's going on a date with somebody who doesn't speak English and he's from a country called Aniston, and I had to Google it, and apparently it is actually a fake country, and they are actually mostly speaking gibberish in this episode. I will feel awful if that's not true, but various sources did say that's the case, and I never knew that until just now, so I learned something. The intro also introduces us to the Xerox place and Chloe, and the fact that Joey and Chandler are going down there basically to stare at the hot girl, and that becomes important later on. Part of the episode focuses on the fact that Joey and Chandler do think they're going to end up in a threesome with Chloe, and they start discussing this, and it definitely provides a lot of light humour surrounding the more serious aspect with Ross and Rachel, but I will get in with that in a moment. The other part of the episode is also about Phoebe and this date with Sergei, and she invites Monica along to be the translator's date. And that doesn't really go to plan because Monica just wants to talk with the translator, so the translator is not really there to translate for Phoebe and Sergei. My favourite bit in the whole thing is when he says plate. I don't know why it's so funny, but every time I watch the episode, I just find that to be so entertaining. Definitely, again, something that's quite light comedy. It definitely helps to break up the more serious aspect with Ross and Rachel because the narrative revolving around Ross and Rachel is pretty difficult to watch if you're a fan of Ross and Rachel as a couple. Rachel has a deadline at work, things are going crazy, but it's their anniversary. So Ross thinks the smart decision is to bring a picnic basket to her office. Because as we know, every time Ross has gone down there with a romantic gesture, that's always worked out for him. Or maybe not. Nevertheless, he doesn't learn from his past mistakes. He goes down with a picnic basket. Things are crazy. And Rachel tells him to leave. And obviously Ross is devastated by this. But then when Rachel comes home, they have an argument. And again, there is some comedy in there. There's a line about a park ranger. But it's quite heavy. And Rachel decides, which I think is the really important fact, Rachel decides they should take a break. Not for frozen yogurt, but a break from their relationship. And Ross just leaves. He doesn't know what to say. He just walks out the door. And we learn pretty quickly that Rachel regretted what she said, but Rachel made a bad mistake. Now, I think both Ross and Rachel were in the wrong here. And I'd love to know if you have an opinion about this. I can't say too much about this without spoiling future episodes. But what I will say is, were they on a break? Do you think that's an excuse or not? I don't think it's an excuse, but I don't think Rachel should be so much on her high horse and pretend that she did nothing wrong in this, because she willingly let Mark come over when Mark is, rightly or wrongly, and I think wrongly, very much one of the reasons why Ross became so possessive. And Mark is very much, as we learned during that fight, a problem for Ross and something he feels very insecure about. So Rachel feeling bad about instigating this hopefully temporary breakup, and then allowing Mark into the apartment, that was a bad thing for her to do. Sure, she might not have thought Ross was ever going to find out, but there was no reason why Ross wouldn't just walk through the door at any moment. So she did a bad thing. And I don't think she ever felt that. And that's not to say that Ross going down to the bar, kissing Chloe, I don't think that was excusable. I don't think it was the right thing to do. But Rachel did a bad thing as well. And she's far too much on her high horse to realise that. And that's a bit of an issue with this episode. It's not the happiest ending. But then we have the final scene with Phoebe and Sergei singing American Pie, and it's delightful. But we have the classic to be continued on screen, and I will say no more. Because I don't want to get into too much of a debate with this without ruining future episodes. But I will say that I think it's not black and white. It's not just a case of Ross was in the wrong. I think they both made very bad decisions that night. Maybe some worse than others, but nevertheless, neither Ross nor Rachel were perfectly in the right here. It's a pretty heavy episode, but we have a lot of comedy in there as well, and there are some interesting things to come, but I'll say no more. The one where Ross and Rachel take a break is, as I said, a really important episode for shaping the future of the series, and definitely a very well crafted episode.